Hiya, my name is Anya and I'm here to lay something spiritual on ya. So in the Northern Hemisphere, we are now approaching yet another holiday on the Wheel of the Year, and it is the holiday, the fire festival known as Beltane. In the Southern Hemisphere, this holiday occurs around October 31st, and in the Northern Hemisphere, it comes on May 1st. A modern holiday equivalent for this might also be known as May Day, but for pagans, we usually call it Beltane. Beltane is the unofficial start of summer. So as you have seen, if you've been watching these videos on the Wheel of the Year, we are honoring the cycles of nature. We are honoring the cycles of the sun as they all go through the seasons. And that's really what this is, a progression through different seasons of growth. And by Beltane, we are really seeing things starting to come to fruition. And Beltane is this midway point between the seasons of spring and summer. So it's this unofficial start to the summer where we are starting to celebrate that we don't have to think about the dark time, the dark seasons, the cold months anymore. At this point, we are not going to have to deal with the intense dark and cold that we do during the winter months. And that's what we're celebrating here, this reinvigoration of life. It is here and we are here to celebrate it. Along this time, since Yule through to Imbolc and through to Ostara, we have started to see the return to life coming and proving to us that we are in a state of growth. And by Beltane, we're starting to see that come to fruition. Everything is green. There's more flowers, not just the ones of early spring, but all of the different plant life is in bloom at this point, or it should be at this point. And we're starting to see more animals are having their babies at this point. So really it is this point of life renewed. The promise of that renewal, it's here. We've gotten here. If you are using the Wheel of the Year to mark your own goals and growth and progression of what you want to achieve in a year, at this point you might really start seeing the fruits of that labor. You might start seeing, you've had your growth, you've had your changes. You can see a marked difference between where you are now versus where you were before. And that is what we're celebrating at this holiday. It's a big holiday and festival for things like fertility. So yes, the celebration of life and life returning to earth and nature, but also a celebration of our own fertility. So there's a lot of sexual imagery that comes with this holiday. At this holiday, we might have seen people lighting bonfires. That was a big thing. Everyone would take away the fires from their own homes, and the big Beltane bonfire would be lit and people would dance around it and celebrate the returning life and heat to the earth, because the sun, it's staying out even longer, guys. We can feel the heat as we come outside. We can see that life is here because that sun is staying out longer. That's what we're celebrating here, and that's what people in ancient times would have been celebrating too. So that's why the big bonfires are lit. The Beltane bonfires are lit and people are dancing around it and bringing their livestock out to be around the fires and celebrate this return to life and the knowledge that we are still going to get these longer days. It's going to keep getting longer until that summer solstice. And we have all of that still to look forward to. So really it's that unofficial start to summer here. When the bonfires were lit, people would take light, a torch from that bonfire, and use it to relight the hearths in their own home. Bringing that Beltane light and heat and intensity and luck into their own homes. This is also a festival to celebrate lovers. So you might see a lot of people doing hand fasting, which would mean that they might be holding hands, tying their hands together and declaring their interest and intention with one another. And then by summer or autumn, you might see marriages coming to fruition. So again, this is a big celebration for things like love and fertility and sex. Yeah, let's say it. Let's just talk about it, because in paganism, sex is not something that we look at as wrong, bad, or sinful. It is part of being human. It's something to be celebrated. And it's a big, important aspect of life. So I can't speak for most pagans, but this doesn't equate to orgies everywhere with everyone you meet, but there is a recognition that this is a sacred and special part of life, and it's something that we can enjoy and celebrate in being humans as well. Another big thing that would have been done at Beltane that we see a lot of are things like the maypole dancings. You might not know what this is or what it means, but at least you might be familiar with the imagery of what a maypole dance looks like. So the maypole dance, usually what you would see in this visual imagery is a big pole with ribbons and pretty string tied around it, and people would dance and weave about each other in a circle and wrap the string and the yarn and the ribbons around this pole. Now this symbology is very much tied to fertility, with the pole being a phallic symbol, essentially being representative of the male aspect of fertility, the masculine side of things, and the ribbon being wrapped around it being the feminine aspect of it. In paganism, because fertility and sex and things like that are considered sacred, there isn't this fear or shame tied around these subjects. And more than that, one aspect of sexuality is not greater, superior, or better than the other. So we're not living in this mentality that the male aspect is superior to the female. In paganism, at least from my point of view and my studies and how I work with paganism in my own life, male and female are equal in importance. They are different in how they work and function and flow within ourselves and within each other, but they are both equal. So there isn't this shame of feminine enjoyment of sex and things like that, and there isn't this idea that a woman has lost something by enjoying an aspect of her sexuality. It's not about that, and that shame and that fear is not there. But more than that, it's not seen as though sex is something only for males. So that's why you can have this symbology of the ribbon weaving and dancing around this maypole and what it symbolizes. The enjoyment of sex and the connections and the life that comes from it, but also just the enjoyment and pleasure of it. That's what this holiday is meant to be about. So because this is a fire festival, and as I've said in other videos, fire festivals I tend to look at as though they're connected to the goddess more than the god, although the god is still present here. But it's a fire festival, so I look at this holiday as a celebration of the goddess and feminine energy. Even though, obviously, as I've said, there are masculine elements here that we are using to celebrate this festival as well. But in that, let's talk about where the god and the goddess are in terms of themselves, their growth, and their development, as we talk about in each of these videos. So the goddess, at this stage, we're seeing her develop into mother form, or at least that's where I would see it. Some people at this stage look at the god and the goddess as though the god is now finally mature and ready enough to become a responsible and mature lover to the goddess, whereas I look at it as though the god and the goddess have already been kind of, enjoying themselves and having fun and loving each other since, in bulk at least, because that's where we started to see life slowly coming back to Earth. Whereas here, I would look at the goddess as though she has matured quite a bit more. I would see her as a mother figure now, as someone that has realized that she and her life have created all the life on this planet, and there's so much more to think about and consider. And she continues that mothering energy of kindness and compassion and continuing to give, because that's what the mother aspect of the feminine is kind of all about. It is very self-sacrificing in order to benefit others. Why is it like this? Because that's kind of a big thing of what motherhood is all about. Think about a woman who has to carry a child in order to give birth to it. We have stopped recognizing that there is a sacrifice in this, that this is not an easy thing, that it's not a walk in the park, it's not just a thing women do. It is a sacrifice that women make in order to bring life into this world. That's a sacrifice in and of itself, and we should be mindful of that. So if you think about it in terms of that, and you think about what the Earth herself has done all of this time, she is constantly giving of herself, her resources, her own life, to make sure that we, all of the life that live on Earth, all of the trees, all of the animals, all of the human beings, can live and thrive and be sustained. She doesn't ask for anything in return because she's happy to make the sacrifice for others. That is a very big aspect of the divine feminine. It's about community and connecting with others and being there for others, and that's what the goddess is doing at this stage. She's recognized just how far she's come in terms of life-giving, and she's fully in that commitment now of constantly giving and being there and sacrificing herself and her own desires and her own needs to be there for the life on this planet. And I think that's kind of a good thing for us to continue recognizing, whether you're a pagan or not. It's the symbolism of what it means, what this earth is constantly giving to us and providing us so that we can continue living, and what are we giving back? If you hang with me on the mother and child comparison, as a child, you don't recognize or understand what your mother might be sacrificing in order to make sure you're happy and sustained. You're especially not aware of that when you're a child in the womb. But as you get older, you do start to see just how much was sacrificed for yourself and your well-being. And in that sense, you start to become more grateful and recognize that, and you show your gratitude in different ways. So how are we as human beings, as the beings on this earth that are capable of reasoning and logic and choosing to make better decisions, how are we giving back to the planet that is constantly providing for us so that we can live? That might be something to think about this Beltane. Let's talk about where the god is at this point. Now, as I spoke about at Imbolc and at Ostara, at those stages, I would see the god as sort of more of a youth, just the same way I would have seen the goddess in her maiden form. At this stage, the god has matured into a father figure, which means he has grown in maturity and understanding that there is a responsibility that comes with his love affair with the earth, with the goddess. And he is realizing he needs to step up and not just be this carefree and excited, adventurous youth. Now there is responsibility because there's so much more life here that needs to be sustained. And again, if we want to think about this in terms of parenting and mother's roles versus father's roles, yes, we can obviously argue that women play the more self-sacrificing figure in terms of pregnancy and childbirth. We can't deny that, and we do need to start remembering that. But men, or the father figure, needs to be playing a supportive role as well. If we look at like physical differences between men and women, men typically are physically stronger than women. And in that sense, the male figure in terms of parenthood is often the protector and the supportive role in that aspect. In this sort of comparison, which would be, especially to our ancestors, an important figure to helping give support to the woman who is pregnant and getting ready to give birth. This is, in a sense, what the god, as the male aspect of this divine coupling, is meant to be doing. The sun provides its heat and warmth and support that every single life on this planet needs in order to continue thriving. If we didn't have the sun, we could not live on this planet. We wouldn't have the heat, and the planet would just freeze, ultimately. But more than that, we also wouldn't have the plant life that creates our oxygen. We wouldn't have the plant life and the animal life that we use as sustenance and food. The sun plays a very big supportive role, even if it's not directly involved in the carrying of life and the birthing of life. And this is one of the big aspects that this divine masculine role is meant to play in this divine masculine and divine feminine union. So at this stage, at Beltane, the god has moved beyond this eagerness of childhood and youth. If you want to compare it, it's sort of that growing between your teenage years and your early 20s and starting to go into your late 20s and your early 30s and realizing that, yeah, things can be fun, but there's also responsibilities that come with it. And the god at this stage sees just how much life is being sustained by the goddess, and he is growing appreciative, but also recognizes the sacrifices she makes, and it makes him want to step up and be more of a supportive figure rather than just a young person looking around for the next thing to enjoy himself with. That's where I see these two, the god and the goddess, at this stage at Beltane. And because this is a time where we're celebrating green and life returning and the recognition that we're no longer in the cold months and fire and heat and fertility and excitement, it's all kind of connected. So that's what this holiday is all about. And if you would like, please check out my next video where I'm going to talk about a few ways that you can celebrate Beltane this year if you'd like. Thanks guys, Anya out. Bye!